draconian thing and say that we are rejecting this. But that will only create arrears. You will not do away with the deficit. You have the deficit cash basis, you will be performing, but commitment basis, the deficit will still be growing. And one day, people will demonstrate and want their monies. Because it will mean that you will not be able, if you reject checks, you will not be able to pay salaries. You will not be able to pay service, even the debt. You will not be able to pay contractors and so on. They will all be there. The statutory payments will all be there. And one day, it will still come up. So it may be a temporary thing, but it will not be a long-lasting solution. The solution will lie in the reduction in the deficit, and that's fiscal consolidation.
Also, some of the other issues that also came up at the press conference was the fact that the Bank of Ghana has raised its key lending rate from 19 to 18%, with implications for loan that you're servicing or intend to go in for. And the rate of inflation for June, meanwhile, also rose to 15%, the highest in 4 years. In the light of what the governor has been, speaking about, what are we to expect and how are we supposed to cope with it? We'll be joined shortly by Sydney Kesley-Hayford, who is a financial analyst, to speak more to this particular issue. But let's go on the phone lines now and bring in Collins up here. He's with NDK Limited. Collins, good evening to you and thank you very much for joining us here on today's Big Story.
Thank you.
Now, listening in to the governor and of course, some of the issues that came up, does the picture look really good for us?
I think for me, the picture, as he himself stated, it's not really good. And he almost all the indicators that he was mentioning, you realize that they were talking about government expenditure, government deficit, government revenue, and so on and so forth. And he was even recommending that fiscal consolidation, or fiscal consolidation is something that the government has to look at it. And that's why I stated earlier that I think that this time around, though anytime you have inflation going up, anytime you have your currency deteriorating, the correct response from the monetary side, stands to just, increase the interest rate or take, a policy that will counteract this inflation and so on and so forth. But I think at this point in time, the central bank or the monetary policy at the moment has stressed itself so much that because the fiscal policy is not supporting, you still get, the tendency of having instability in your country or in your economy. What the central bank is actually doing is that, even on the open market operation, one of the tools that they use to, control the money in circulation, in terms either selling financial institutions or buying financial instruments, just like the treasury, the government, bonds, or even selling foreign assets. All these are things that they use to increase. And at the moment, if you look at how the treasury rates are going up, now the next one treasury bill, for instance, is around 24%. The 182 is around 22%. The 1 year is around 23%, and so on and so on. It tells us that just even beginning of this year, those rates were even around 17, 18, 19. It tells you how the government is still borrowing, and that tells you how the government is probably taking so much money from, in circulation. Now, if you go and increase the interest rate, I think that as much as they were looking at the threat from inflation, which I believe that this inflation that we are experiencing now is not as a result of a high demand, or a demand, aggregate demand, side, because at the end of the day, you also have to ask yourself what is causing the inflation. If truly it's aggregate demand, then taking money from the system by increasing interest rates are one of the good things that you should look after. But I realize that it's actually not from a monetary angle. I see it mainly from a fiscal policy angle, because one, the government spent so much, from 2012, 2013, there about the beginning of this year. Look at the, single fund that the government is trying, even forcing itself to implement. Look at the NHIS, policy that the government is banking on. Look at the rules. Look at other, sort of government policy that he intended by injecting so much money into the system, reducing the subsidy, from some of these things, are causing fuel prices to go up. at the end of the day, the ordinary person who sits maybe from Amasaman and goes to Accra to transact in business, if transfers fair, if petroleum prices have gone up, he also has the tendency to increase his price. So at the end of the day, they're actually not having the fact that because there has been money in his pocket, that's why he's increasing his price. So that tells you that, no, this thing is not coming as a result of people having so much money. That's why they are bidding prices up. And therefore, if you go to increase interest rates, what it means is that you are rather increasing the threat on the financial system. And I believe that at the moment, the financial system is really heading towards, I wouldn't use a word, a crisis, but I think we are moving into a zone that is not comfortable even for the financial system. It's not comfortable for the sustainability or, the stability that you expect the financial system. Because today you even have microfinance, non-bank financial institutions, savings and loans, so much competition, bidding for higher prices because if you don't increase your rate, you don't get the money, you don't get the deposit. And if you have that, and the Bank of Ghana is also even supporting you, that, hey, even now, I expect that you push your rate up. What is the rate that we are seeing on the market now? Microfinance are giving more than 40%, 50%. If they take a deposit at 40-something%, what rate do you expect them to give to, business people? And it increases the default, rate for people, even collapsing business and so on and so forth. Because if the financial institution who has gone, into borrow at 40-something%, he is also likely to, take all his costs, the operational costs and so on, and the margin that he expects, the profit he expects to pay. So you expect the rate that they give to private sector at a higher rate that I think that the private sector will not be able to get a good profit to come and pay. So I don't know what happens. The private sector is affected. You cry the private sector out, and the financial institution that you even expect that they do good work will also be affected because the private sector is not able to pay the loan or repay the loan that they've taken.
Very well.
And, you affect the financial system as well. And I think for me, this time around, I was really not in support of them increasing it because there have been so many, policies either from the government side. And I think that's why in economics, we tell you that sometimes you should allow the market to correct itself. Let the market, the free hand of the market, work so that the equilibrium can be restored.
Okay.
When you have so much intervention, it affects the equilibrium of the system, and you find yourself out where we are.
Let me at this point bring in an economist, Dr. Richardson. Thank you very much for joining us as well, Dr. Theo Richardson. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Very well.
Thanks for having me.
So listening to Collins, he makes the point that, look, there's a need for us to get to a comfortable zone. And that's the more reason why we need to be looking at this debate as to where our direction should be in terms of the growth at which we want our economy should be to go in terms of the monetary policy and fiscal policy. Now, for you, where should be Ghana's stance on this?
I think Collins has made a lot of good points. He's said a lot of things that are indeed correct. His analysis of the causes of inflation, it's I think spot on. That whether inflation is being demand-driven or supply-driven is an empirical question that we should properly address. And I think that I'll agree with him that it's when inflation is being demand-driven that an increase in the interest rate, will be effective, in quelling inflation. We all don't know if the exchange rate is depreciating or if the exchange rate depreciates. That that's inflationary consequences. But inflation is basically the gap between aggregate demand and aggregate supply. And given the levels of aggregate demand, if there are serious supply side problems, in other words, if there is recession, then that could also push up prices and result in a high rate of inflation. I think the government has admitted that there is some recession. And if there is some recession, we should expect some supply side effects. Indeed, inflation in Ghana, as empirical evidence indicates, is more of a social problem than anything else. And we do have the structure of the economy whereby the slightest monetary expansion would result in inflation. And if indeed the government is not even increasing the supply of money, okay, in the traditional sense, we do know that fiscal policy do have monetary implications, and so if indeed there is increase in government expenditure, we should expect that will result in more money in the market, and therefore some inflation. But that does not seem to be the case. We know that the government over the years has embarked upon fiscal consolidation, and that means cutting government expenditure and increasing taxes. So people have less money to spend. If government is reducing its expenditure by way of subsidies, which is also a contentious issue, then as Collins rightly put it, you should expect the increases in prices of basic consumers, including petroleum, will translate into higher prices and overall level of inflation. So there's a number of things that is going in. Indeed, the continued depreciation of the city is having a huge effect on inflation. And we should also expect that if the city continues to depreciate and that inflationary spiral, then we should expect some capital flight. And increased capital flight will lead to greater depreciation of the city, and that will lead to a spiraling cycle of inflation and depreciation of the city, and indeed, a kind of economic crisis.
And so, colleagues, listening to Dr. Theo Richardson, where lies that particular argument that you raised about the direction which we should go, that, look, our over-concentration on monetary policy doesn't seem to be helping the situation?
It's unfortunate. I could hardly hear what the economy was actually saying. But I think I heard that he was actually not saying what I'm saying is not true, or more or less counteracting most of the things that I was talking about.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, for economic, policies, all of us agree that there should be a way of doing business. In fact, in Ghana, the problem that we are going through at the moment is that I think it's about taking economic decisions as against taking political decisions. Most of the decisions that have been done in over the years are more of political gain rather than looking at the economic gain. Because yesterday, for instance, I was making a point that if we're to be going strictly about economic, decisions, you wouldn't want to keep an employment level saying that you are keeping, let's say, even use a small business as an example. An employer will not want to keep so much employees if their output is not commensurate. You get the point. Why should we keep on continuing having this large public sector when we are not able to get the appropriate or more or less the adequate output that we expect from them? At the end of the day, you look for a way to take them off. And that's why what happens in the private sector. I know the government will be, biased when it comes to employment.
Yes.
The government will not be happy taking that, hey, I want to cut the size of the public sector, and therefore people will say we don't have, jobs to do. At the end of the day, if they don't have jobs to do, you have to now have a policy that will increase the public sector, create an environment that will increase the public sector for people to do business freely and can have themselves, having moving into other businesses.
Very, very well. I'm going to have to thank you very much, Collins, for that. Let me just have Dr. Richardson, make his point, and then we can move on to Sydney. Yes, Doc.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Look, 2 points, key points. I mean, the strength of government policy since 2009, has been called fiscal consolidation. Which is basically a typical IMF-style monetary stabilization policy, which involves massive cuts in government expenditure, especially from 2009 to somewhere 2012. A cut in expenditure on capital investment, and in addition to that, there has also been phenomenal increases in tax.
Very well.
And when there's increases in tax, we should expect that prices will automatically go up, because producers will, in the context of oligopolistic competition, imperfect market, will put those taxes on top of prices of goods. My own survey in the Medina market indicates tells you a story about the rate of inflation in the economy. At the same time, the government, has admitted that there has been serious liquidity crisis. That all the money the wheat has been eaten up to the bone. And this shows that there's a liquidity crisis. And liquidity crisis will translate automatically into a sovereignty crisis, which is what we are having with the massive government borrowing from abroad, especially the Eurobond increases, Eurobond borrowing, which all feeds into the exchange rate problem. So the problem has to do more with the government fiscal policy stance as well as its monetary policy. I think this traditional policies will not work in the circumstances that we find ourselves.
Okay,
and we need to sit down and have a proper debate about how to take the economy.
Well, and the debate.
I mention this finally.
Quickly, sir.
Since 1983, since we moved from fixed exchange rate to flexible exchange rate, the city has been depreciating, and that raises a fundamental question about the exchange rate regime that we have been operating.
Okay, I think you made that point already, but many thanks for talking to us, Dr. Richardson. Let me just move on to the studio now, and I've been joined by Dr. Kisley Sidney Hayford, financial Sidney Kisley Hayford. Thank you very much for joining us on today's big story. Now, listening to the Monetary Policy Committee and some of the points they make, especially with regards to fiscal consolidation, which I'll let you listen to a couple of moments shortly. It mentions the fact that, look, fiscal consolidation would require a more aggressive stance in the second quarter of the year, this year, 2014, and that government must continue to enhance revenue measures and nationalize expenditures to achieve fiscal deficit target of 8.5% of the GDP for the year. What does this tell on the general picture in terms of our economy?
Well, apart from the fact that it is just repeating what has been said over and over again and actually not achieving any results, I don't see what else we are doing. We have heard the mantra several times. Government says that it has put all the measures in place for takeoff and that it is just a matter of time before everything happens. I've been hearing this for 6 years, going back to 2009 when this NDC government took over. It's all that they have said. And up until now, we're still hearing the same thing. I don't really think that this government has an answer yet. It is still groping, but I don't think it has an answer. And for as long as government is lost in the forest, in the woods of economy, and trying to figure out how to come out, there will be no answer.
And so what are the major steps you think government should take? Because it mentions, for instance, that, look, in terms of our domestic economy, the risk to the fiscal outlook have increased on the account of underperformance of government revenues in rising the share of compensation as far as employees are concerned in domestic revenues and increasing difficulty in raising finances from traditional sources and the situation compounded as a result of the emergence of subsidies and also the delays in the adjustment of utility, petroleum and all that. So what are the steps that you think government should take?
Okay, you see, subsidies and poverty nets are a choice in policy. You decide that you're going to do it or not. This government has chosen, under its social democratic stance, to support anything that it thinks it's supportable. Hence the recent issue about supporting sanitary pads for girls as a gesture to try and say, we care. But you see, what we are seeing here is not a government that really understands how business works and how private sector operates. So you're getting a whole mishmash of solutions which are not actually yielding any results. The important thing is this: when you are in a situation in which we are in, where your revenue streams are not coming through as much as you projected, and your expenses are running beyond what you projected, you only have two choices. You have to figure out broadly, what more can I do to bring in revenues, which has been highlighted, and then what can I do to cut expenditures. Government is still recruiting onto its payroll. It needs to stop, because there's no need to keep on piling people onto a situation where you can't manage your payroll. So government needs to do something about that. Government is interfering and getting itself involved in so many places where the private sector can actually operate and operate well. And government has all that on its payroll. Government can shed that off its payroll and enable private sector to kick in.
Okay.
So with all of that coming in, it's difficult to understand who government is listening to, and what solutions that they are applying to the current malaise in which we find ourselves.
And listening to Collins Appiah of NDK, he makes the point that very proud to this Monetary Policy Committee's press conference. He mentioned the fact that, look, the over-concentration on monetary policies is what has gotten us where we are. And so he's looking at a situation where Ghana will move towards fiscal policies. And he thinks that that's of essence than...
Well, you see, I don't like those labels, because when you talk about monetary policy, then people judge you according to the monetary policy you're putting in place, or else you have a fiscal policy stance, and then people are judging whether or not you're actually applying true fiscal policy or true monetary policy. I think all that really at this time is a waste of time. We should focus on what actually generates revenue and what allows us to shed costs.
But there are those who say the two go together. There's no way you can decouple them.
Revenue and expenses?
I mean, monetary and fiscal
Why
policies.
not? It's a term. They are terminologies. They are economically defined terms. But I'm saying think outside the box. This is not the time to be sitting down saying I'm a neo-capitalist, or I'm a property owning capitalist, or I'm a social democrat. This is not the time. This is the time when you've actually got to sit down and look at things from a pure numbers point of view. All right? How much income are we generating from taxes? How are we applying that income? How much am I spending on my day-to-day running of this economy, and how can I manage that better? How much more is there outside of the nets that I have now, the tax nets, that I can bring into the economy in order to be able to increase my economic base?
But don't you think government is aware of all this when it admits that,
Absolutely.
look, suspending utility tariffs and all?
And that's why I'm saying looking at it in terms of monetary policy or fiscal policy is neither here nor there. Here are the parameters that we have laid down. We have done this several times. When we went to St. Chi and at the National Economic Forum, all these issues came up and we discussed them. What government has to do is to get off its back, get the will to do what they know should be done. And that is all that has to happen. Government has to sit up and do the right things, because everybody in this country who has any little bit inkling of financial sense has come on air, on radio, or written in the papers for some time what the solutions should be. And government has no end of advice. Maybe it is getting too much advice, so it needs to crystallize that advice. And we did that at the National Economic Forum. So government has a blueprint. All it needs to do is to follow that blueprint item by item, and the solutions will be there. They just have to prioritize.
But we have cocoa, we have oil. So why should government have issues with making revenue from traditional sources?
We also have gold.
Absolutely.
So we have a whole myriad of stuff as well that has not been exploited, and we have non-traditional items as well. We have a lot of potential revenue. But what we have been saying time and again for as long as I can remember, since the time when I understood economics and finance, we have always said we need added value products in order to be able to enhance our exports activity and also to be able to supply the local market. We are still talking about it. And
why are we still talking about it? Is it because we've done little in the area?
Because we are not implementing what we know we need to implement. When we are making decisions, we are making decisions for political expedience and for propagating ourselves in government. We are not making decisions because they are good, pragmatic, solid, sensible economic decisions. We keep going on and making political or providing political solutions simply because we want to continue to stay in charge. Look, you stay in charge by doing the right things. If you do the proper things and you get this economy working, everybody can see it happening. Everybody will be no doubt that you are the government to stay in power. So I don't quite understand why we are turning this thing about face. If you do the right thing, you get support. So by simply not doing the right thing and thinking that you're just going to engage people in a debate and a discussion all the time, it's not going to work.
It looks like the issues have been identified, the challenges have been identified.
They have, and not just today, but from a long time ago.
But it looks like the problem is implementation.
Yes, and we've always had that.
Why is it so?
Well, because I don't know. We've always had that implementation problem. But yes, I do know. The reason why we have it is because governance is centered around the presidency. It has become such that unless the president says, nothing happens. The president even has to order the Minister of Finance to release money. in order for things to get done. You didn't have to do that. There's a Minister of Energy who decides that one of his divisions or departments or his institutions has gone and rented property at above normal rates and says that he wants a probe into it. Then somebody at the presidency overrides that decision and says, no, forget it. We are not going to do that, and all that should cease. Who is more powerful? Who is running the ministry? The energy minister or the advisor or the presidential staffer? You don't know. Now, these are some of the problems that we face, and there is too much that is under the control of the presidency, and the presidency doesn't seem to have the answers to be able to solve things the way they should do. And yet you're hearing all the time, we have things in place, we have put all the parameters in place, we only have some small challenges to overcome. We're tired of challenges. We're tired of challenges. Let's just admit that we have major problems, and let's say, okay, we are going to do A, B, C, D, E, and leave everything else for now, but do A, B, C, D, E, and get those things working so we can move on. It's about revenue, and it's about too much expenditure. That's all it is. Too little revenue, too much expenditure, and government has to fix itself in order for those of us who are in the private sector to be able to manage.
Okay, now final question before I let you go. Why should this outlook as presented by the MPC present any, well, if you like, sort of hope to Ghanaians who are wondering exactly how would the fortunes be like for our economy?
Raising the basis point by one and taking the bank policy rate to 19% is not a good thing, because all that is going to happen is the retail banks are going to raise their lending rates into the system. When they do that, it makes it more expensive for you and I to go and borrow money. So what should we do? We will stop borrowing money. Because if you didn't get a fixed rate on a loan that you already have, and you get what we call a variable rate, in other words, it changes as the rate of the bank changes, then you're in difficulty, because now you're going to have to pay more for the exact same amount of money you borrowed before. What this has done is going to push up the treasury bill rates, so the government is going to find it more expensive to borrow money. Government is crowding the private sector out. Look, we have been there before, and this is where I have so many problems with those who are running the affairs of this government today, especially those who are my age. We did it. It happened to us in Nkrumah's time. This economy practically collapsed. We did it in the Achampong era. We did it in the PNDC era. We did it after that again. It happened again. The economy practically tanked before it rose again. We have seen all this before, and we have seen it go down so low that we actually queued for petrol, and it became a problem. We are seeing it again, and those who are in control of this economy and who are in control of this government should know better, because they have lived through it and they should be able to do it. Maybe it's because our president. Maybe it's because the president is too young,
right.
So he doesn't remember all of these things. Maybe he didn't grow through all of these things, so he can't see the decisions easier. And your question again was, so why
should we be hopeful? Yes or no?
There is no hope. There is no hope if it carries on like this.
Very well.
If we keep on putting these up, we keep on increasing taxes, we keep on running out of petrol, inflation keeps going up, there is no hope. Something has to happen. There has to be an intervention in order for something to cease. I actually thought that when the Bank of Ghana modified its rules and its regulations last time, that these things would change.
Very well.
But it's been such a short time. It's only been a month,
Very
and we
well.
don't see the impact yet. But that doesn't seem to have worked, and the central bank has to go back and think again.
Thank you very much, Sydney. It's always a pleasure having you.
Thank you very much.
Sydney Kesley-Hereford, financial analyst, speaking to us here on today's Big Story. That'll be it for now, though. Coming up shortly, Jen Interactive with Marian Ture.